I wasn't supposed to be here. That's the thing that keeps running through my head, even now. I wasn't supposed to be standing in the doorway of my own kitchen at 2 in the afternoon, a bag of groceries in one hand and a bottle of red wine in the other, staring at a house that felt wrong the second I walked into it. By the way, my name is Kyle. I'm 28 years old, active military, stationed in Guam, and I want to tell you about the day I came home early to surprise my wife on our anniversary, and what I found instead. I was supposed to be in Guam for another 2 weeks. That was the plan. That's what I told Amber. Next month, baby, a home next month. Hold on a little longer. But it was our anniversary, 4 years, and I missed her so much it had started to feel like a physical thing, like something sitting on my chest every morning when I woke up. She doesn't know I will be coming home 2 weeks early as a surprise. I set the groceries on the counter and looked around. The house was quiet in that specific way houses get when no one's been in them for a while. Not the quiet of someone sleeping in the next room, the other kind. I shook it off. She was probably at work. It was only 2 o'clock on a Tuesday. She worked down at the port, freight brokerage, coordinating cargo shipments, the kind of job that kept her on the phone more than off it. I'd cook. I'd have the ravioli going by the time she walked through the door, candles on the table, wine breathing on the counter. She'd walk in stressed and tired, and then she'd see me and everything would stop. That was the plan. I carried my bag to the bedroom to change out of my travel clothes, and that's when I noticed it. A little mess. That wasn't like Amber. She was the neat one between us. Always had been. I used to joke that she made the bed military sharp before I ever could. I told myself she'd probably just had a rough week. Long hours. I understood that. But then I saw the closet. The door was open a few inches, not thrown open, not slammed, just slightly ajar, like it had been closed in a hurry and hadn't caught. I pushed it the rest of the way open and my stomach dropped. The rolling carry-on, the one Amber used for trips, was gone from the shelf. I walked to her side of the closet and stood there doing a slow scan. Her work blazers were gone. A row of blouses. The good jeans she saved for going out. Her overnight bag that usually hung on the hook by the door was gone too. How long was this trip, and why hadn't she said a word about it? I picked up my phone and texted her. "Happy anniversary, baby. Missing you like crazy over here," I typed, keeping my voice out of it, keeping everything normal. The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "Happy anniversary. I miss you so much. Next month can't come fast enough," she replied. "Next month. Right. Can I FaceTime you?" I typed. "I want to see your face." The dots appeared, stopped, and appeared again before her reply came through. "Baby, I really can't right now," she said. "My migraine is so bad, any light at all is killing me. I have the curtains closed and I'm in the dark. Even my phone screen is too bright." I looked up at the window across the room, afternoon sun pouring straight through, curtains wide open, and no Amber having a migraine. "It's our anniversary," I typed back. "Just for a minute." "I know, I'm so sorry," she replied. "I feel terrible. Can we FaceTime tonight when I feel better?" "I promise. I love you so much." I looked at the empty shelf in the closet, the gap where her clothes used to be, the bed that was made by someone who wanted it to look slept in. Of course I typed, "Get some rest. I love you too." Then I set the phone face down on the dresser and stood there in the quiet for a long moment before I went back to the kitchen and sat down at the table with the bottle of red wine and 2 glasses I no longer needed. I knew she was lying. If she'd been called away on business, she would have said so. She would have texted me the second she landed, complained about airports the way she always did, sent me a picture of whatever sad hotel breakfast she was dealing with. That was Amber. She narrated her life to me when I was deployed because she knew I needed it. She hadn't said a word about any trip. I pulled up her social media and scrolled through. Nothing recent, but that didn't mean anything. Amber wasn't a poster. She scrolled, she lurked, she sent me memes at midnight. I already knew this would be a dead end before I even checked. Then I thought of Derek. Derek had been my best friend since we were 19 years old. Happy-go-lucky, that was Derek in 2 words. Couldn't keep a job to save his life. The moment things got hard, he'd shrug, quit, and find something new the following week. My mother never understood why I kept him around. but he made me laugh. And when you needed him, he showed up. Every single time, no questions asked, he showed up. The man was terrible with his phone, though. Text him and you'd be lucky to hear back by the following afternoon. But put him on Instagram and he'd post 3 times before dinner. I figured I'd invite him over for a beer. Let him know I was back early. "Hey man, just got back early. Come over, I'll grab us some beers," I texted. I wasn't expecting a quick reply. That wasn't Derek. So I set the phone down and poured myself a glass of wine. 20 minutes later, he replied. "Hey, can't tonight, out of town visiting family," he said. I typed back, "No worries. Where at?" "Idaho," he replied. Idaho. I wasn't sure why that sat wrong with me at first. It just did. I put the phone down and picked up my wine and stared at the wall for a moment. Then I pulled up Derek's Instagram. If Derek was anywhere worth talking about, it would be on his page. The man never met a moment he didn't want to document. Sure enough, he'd posted that afternoon. A group photo, Derek grinning in the middle, surrounded by his family, everyone smiling for the camera. I almost kept scrolling. But something made me stop and look closer. Behind the group, mounted on the wall, was a large mirror, and reflected in it, slightly off to the side, was a woman standing just out of frame. Dark hair, that smile she had when she was genuinely happy, not the polite one, the real one. The one I had spent 4 years trying to earn every single day. She wasn't looking at the camera. She had no idea she was in the shot. My wife was in Idaho. She was smiling at Derek's family, like she already knew them, like she belonged there. I took a screenshot before I even realized I was doing it. Then I set the phone down on the table and I just sat there. My hands were not steady. I noticed that my eyes were burning and I pressed the heels of my hands against them, and I sat in the quiet of my kitchen for a long time, not moving, not thinking clearly, just existing in that moment before everything changes permanently. Then I got up and went back to the bedroom because some part of me, the part that was still hoping I was wrong, needed to look harder. I don't know exactly what I was looking for. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, and I felt 2 things pulling hard in opposite directions. One part of me was desperately hoping I'd find nothing, that I'd go through every drawer and every shelf and come up empty, that the reflection in the photo was a trick of the light, that I was a man who'd been deployed too long and was seeing things that weren't there. The other part of me needed to find something, because uncertainty was its own kind of pain, and I was already drowning in it. I started with her nightstand. Chapstick, ibuprofen, a book with the bookmark a third of the way through, a hair tie. All of it ordinary. All of it exactly where it should be. I checked under the bed. Nothing but slippers and dust. I went back to the closet and went through it slowly this time, looking at what was still there instead of what was missing. Her good dress, her grandmother's jewelry box on the shelf. The things a person doesn't leave behind permanently. So she wasn't gone for good, just gone for now. I checked the bathroom next. Her everyday makeup was missing, but the good stuff was still there. Toiletries thinned out but not cleared. A long weekend's worth of packing, maybe a little more. I stood at the bathroom sink and looked at myself in the mirror, and I barely recognized the man looking back at me. My eyes were already wet, and I hadn't even realized I'd started crying. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and went back to sit on the edge of the bed, her side. And I sat there in the afternoon light coming through the open curtains, and I thought about 4 years, about every deployment, every long phone call, every "I miss you and I can't wait until you're home." About the way she used to send me photos of the most ordinary things. Her coffee in the morning, the sunset from the backyard, just so I wouldn't feel so far away. Then my phone buzzed. Amber was calling, regular call, not FaceTime. I let it ring. She called again. I declined it and typed, "Driving baby, I'll call you soon. You feeling better? You feeling better?" 3 dots appeared again. "A little bit, yes," she replied. "Just wanted to hear your voice. Call me when you can. I love you so much." I read it and something inside me twisted so hard I had to set the phone down and press both hands flat on my knees just to keep myself together. I typed back, "I love you too," and I meant it. That was the worst part. I still meant it. The home computer was in the small room we called the office, which was really just the second bedroom we'd never gotten around to turning into anything else. A desk, a chair, a bookshelf with books neither of us had opened in years. Amber used it mostly for printing things out. I sat down, turned it on, and saw that she hadn't logged out of her email. I sat there for a moment looking at her inbox, thinking about what kind of man I was about to become. Then I thought about that smile in the mirror behind Derek's family photo, and I started scrolling. Nothing. Work emails, a newsletter she'd never unsubscribed from, a grocery delivery confirmation. I checked the sent folder and the deleted folder. Nothing that told me anything I didn't already suspect. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was a man who had been away too long and had let his mind turn an innocent reflection into something that wasn't there. Maybe I owed her an apology for going through her email. Maybe. I pushed the chair back and started to stand up, and that's when I saw the trash can. It was pushed halfway under the desk, a small plastic bin she kept there for paper scraps and old receipts. I wouldn't have looked twice at it except for the corner of white paper sticking up over the rim. Printed paper. I reached down and pulled the paper out, crumpled but not torn, like she'd printed it and tossed the extra copy without thinking twice. I smoothed the crumpled paper on the desk and read it slowly. A flight confirmation. Round trip. Texas to Boise, Idaho for 2 seats, 2 passengers. Amber and Derek side by side on the same flight to Idaho. Departing 8 days ago, return flight in 4 days. She had paid for it herself out of her own pocket, not from our shared account. She had been that careful. I sat there at that desk and I looked at both their names printed there together and I felt something leave my body. Not anger yet. That came later. First, it was just a hollowness, like someone had reached into my chest and scooped out everything that had been keeping me upright. My wife, my best friend, their names right next to each other on a piece of paper she had thrown in the trash, because she never expected me to be standing in our house 2 weeks early. I folded the paper carefully and put them in my back pocket. Then I went back to the kitchen, sat down at the table and poured myself another glass of wine, and then another. And then I stopped pouring and just picked up the bottle because what was the point? I sat at that kitchen table for a long time, drinking and staring at nothing, and at some point the crying came back, and this time I didn't try to stop it. I cried the way a man cries when he's completely alone and there's no one to hold it together for. I finished the bottle, I put my head down on the table, and I don't know exactly when I fell asleep, but I did. I woke up still slumped in that chair, my neck stiff and my back aching from hours of sleeping hunched over the kitchen table. My head was pounding, my mouth was dry, and the empty wine bottle was still sitting in front of me where I'd left it. The morning light was coming through the window, and for about 3 seconds, climbing out of sleep, I forgot why I felt so destroyed. Then it all came back. I sat there for a long time just staring at the table. The folded papers were still in my back pocket. The screenshot was still on my phone. And somewhere in Idaho, my wife was waking up in a house that wasn't hers, next to a man who had been my best friend for 9 years. But then something else crept in. That small, stubborn, desperate voice that didn't want any of this to be true. Because Derek was my best friend. He wouldn't do this to me. We had known each other since we were 19 years old. He had stood at my wedding. And Amber loved me. She had told me so 100 times. She had texted me, "I love you," just yesterday. Maybe I was looking at this wrong. Maybe Derek had just invited her along because he knew she was alone and didn't want her to spend the anniversary by herself. He had always looked out for her when I was deployed. I had asked him to. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe I was overreacting. I picked up my phone and called Amber. No answer. I called again. No answer. I called Derek. No answer. I went back to Derek's Instagram and pulled up the photo again. It was still there. He hadn't taken it down, which meant he probably still didn't realize Amber was visible in the mirror behind his family. I zoomed in on the reflection and stared at it for a long time. Her dark hair, that smile. There was no version of this where I was wrong, and I knew it, but I still didn't want to believe it. The fact that neither of them was answering my calls was doing something to my blood pressure that I didn't have words for. Every unanswered ring felt like another door closing. I set the phone down and pressed both fists flat on the table and breathed slowly and told myself to stay level. Then I picked the phone back up and texted Amber. Amber, I typed. Where are you really? She replied faster than I expected. I'm with Mandy, she said. I started feeling better yesterday, so I went to keep her company. I read that once, twice. Mandy. She had all night to come up with something, and she still went with Mandy. FaceTime me right now, I typed back. Show me Mandy. What's wrong, Kyle? She replied. I found the flight confirmations, Amber, I typed, and my hands were steady now in a way they hadn't been the night before. Both of them. Your name and Derek's name on the same flight to Idaho. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Where are you really? FaceTime me right now. A long pause. Then her face appeared on my screen. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red, and she was holding herself very still, the way people do when they're trying to control their expression and not quite managing it. I looked at her face on that screen, and I felt everything I'd been carrying since yesterday settle into something cold and quiet in my chest. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Say something, I said. Kyle, she started, I can explain. Then explain, I said, because I have a screenshot of Derek's family photo with your reflection in the mirror behind everyone. And I have 2 flight confirmations out of your trash with both your names on them. So go ahead, explain. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me, and I watched the last of her story fall apart behind her eyes. Let me talk to Derek, I said. Kyle, she said. Put him on, I said. Right now. There was a long pause and muffled movement, and then Derek's face appeared on the screen. 9 years of friendship looking back at me, and I felt something in my chest go completely cold. Look, man, Derek said quietly. I'm so sorry. Why? I said, and the word came out broken and quiet. Just, why, Derek? You are my best friend. How long has this been going on? Derek looked down and couldn't hold my eyes. About a year, he said. A year. I had been in Guam for 14 months. The math hit me like a wall. I could hear Amber crying somewhere behind him, and then she came back on screen, her mascara running, her eyes red. Kyle, she said, there's something I have to tell you. I'm pregnant. 3 months. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just sat there and stared at her face on that screen and felt the ground underneath me disappear completely. It's Derek's, she continued. You've been gone since last year. It's not yours. Something came out of me then that I'm not proud of. Not words, just a sound, low and ragged, the kind that comes from somewhere you didn't know you had. I pressed my fist against my mouth and I breathed through my nose and I stared at the ceiling for a moment because I could not look at her face. Kyle, she said, her voice going softer. I'm sorry, I truly am. But maybe it's better you know now. I want a divorce. I need a divorce, especially now. Why? I said, the word barely making it out. I need you to tell me why. Give me that much. Derek was always there, she said finally. Every time something broke, every time I got scared, every time I needed someone, he was there and you weren't. I know that's not fair. I know you didn't choose to be gone, but I can't do this anymore. I can't keep living like this. I laughed. It came out ugly and hollow. You can't do long distance, I repeated. I was serving my country. I was deployed, and that's what you're telling me. She didn't answer. Call your family tonight, I said, and my voice had dropped to something quiet and flat that was somehow worse than shouting. Tell them to be at our house tomorrow to pick up your things, because if your stuff is still on that porch by tomorrow night, it goes in the dumpster. Every last thing. And tell Derek, I will be talking to a lawyer. I ended the call. I sat in the quiet of that kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing. Then I called Robert Hale's office. He handled my parents' divorce 7 years ago. He will see me tomorrow morning. I sat at that table, and I don't know how long I stayed there. At some point, my stomach reminded me I hadn't eaten since before my flight. I didn't care. I had no appetite for anything. I got up, walked to the bedroom, lay down on my side of the bed, and stared at the ceiling, replaying everything, looking for the moment I missed, trying to find where it all went wrong. At some point, sleep took me. And when I opened my eyes the next morning, something had shifted. The grief was still there, but so was something else. I had a mission. I showered, put on clean clothes, packed Amber's things into every trash bag I could find in the house, and stacked them on the front porch. Clothes, shoes, the everyday makeup from the bathroom, the books from her nightstand. I moved through it quickly and mechanically because if I slowed down, I was going to fall apart again, and I didn't have time for that. I was done by 7:15. I drove to Robert Hale's office with a headache that sat right behind my eyes the whole way. He got coffee in hand, same quiet eyes I remembered from 7 years ago when he'd handled my parents' divorce. He shook my hand and gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Tell me everything," he said. So I did. When I finished, he leaned forward and said, "Texas is a fault state. Adultery affects asset division, and depending on the circumstances, you may have additional options worth exploring against the third party." I nodded. "Let's get started," I said. After the meeting, I drove back home and sat at the kitchen table. About an hour later, I heard a truck pull up outside. I saw Derek's truck from the front window, and I stood there for a moment with my hand flat against the wall, just breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way they teach you. I thought about my father and 30 years of service and never once losing his composure in public. I thought about my brother out there on a carrier somewhere right now, trusting that the life he left behind was still intact. I thought about my nephew Ethan, 21 years old, about to put on an Air Force uniform for the first time. I thought about my family name and everything it meant and everything I was not going to do in my own front yard. I opened the door before they could knock. Derek looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. I looked at him standing in my driveway, and I want to be honest with you. I have never in my life wanted to hit another person the way I wanted to hit him in that moment. Not in 2 deployments, not in any of the hard things I have been through. I wanted to put my fist through his face, and I could feel exactly how it would feel. And I stood there in my doorway, and I held every muscle in my body completely still. "Kyle, man, I just want you to know." He started. "You need to get off my property," I said, quiet and even. "Right now. Please, just let me," he tried. "Derek," I said, and I let him see everything I was holding back, every single bit of it. "I have never wanted to hurt someone the way I want to hurt you right now. So I am asking you, I'm telling you, to step back and let her get her things and then get in your truck and drive away. Because I am this close to doing something that ends with me in handcuffs, and you do not want to be the reason for that." He stepped back without another word. Amber moved past me to the porch and started picking up the trash bags without looking at me. Derek grabbed the heavier ones. I stood in the doorway with my arms crossed and my jaw tight, and I watched them load his truck, and I thought about my father and my brother and Ethan, and I did not move. When the porch was clear, Amber turned to face me. She looked like she'd been crying for days, and part of me noticed that, and part of me felt nothing at all. "Kyle," she said, "I'm so sorry. I truly am." I looked at her for a long moment. "I'm sorry too," I said. Her face shifted. She hadn't expected that. "You're sorry," she said, almost laughing. "Sorry because you were never here? Because you were always gone?" I let her finish. Then I smiled. Not a warm smile. The other kind. "No," I said quietly. "I'm not sorry for serving my country. That's sorry. You'll find out soon enough what it means." She stared at me. I laughed. Not unhinged, not cruel. Just the laugh of a man who is holding every card at a table where the other person just went all in on nothing. Amber looked at me like I was a stranger. Then she got in Derek's truck and didn't look back. I watched them drive away. Then I closed the door. 7 months later. I was already back in Guam when the divorce was finalized. Robert Hale handled everything. Amber's lawyer made noise about the house early on, and Robert made one phone call, and that conversation ended the same afternoon. The house deed was in my mother's name, had been since my parents' divorce 7 years ago. It was never Amber's to begin with. My cousin Jake is staying at the Texas house while I'm out here. His job is 15 minutes away, and at least the place is sitting empty. It's still mine, still standing, just like me. I heard recently that Derek quit his job. Shocking, I know. He's home now, all day, while Amber works and carries the weight of everything. She told me she couldn't do long distance. She couldn't handle me being away. She needed someone present, someone who showed up every single day. Now she's stuck with a man who is home every single day and can't pay a bill. She got what she wanted, I guess. I'm still angry. I won't pretend otherwise. There are moments when it hits me out of nowhere and I have to just sit with it and breathe through it. Betrayal doesn't leave clean. It leaves a mark, and the mark takes time. But I'm learning to let go, slowly, on my own terms, and being deployed makes it easier. The one thing that gives me the most peace is that we never had children together. No custody, no complications, no reason to ever have to look at either of them again if I choose not to. Just a clean break. I have my mother in New Mexico, happy with her husband who would always tell me he's proud of me. My father in Hawaii, and his wife always saving me a spot at the barbecue. My cousin Jake keeping the lights on back in Texas. Funny thing, being deployed used to mean missing every holiday. Now my biggest problem is choosing which family to spend it with. Both sides want me at their table, and nobody's taking no for an answer. I could think of worse problems. I really could. I always said that about Derek. He'll be there for you when you need him. No matter what, Derek shows up. He was there for my wife while I was away. All right? So that's our story for today. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe so you never miss a new story. And drop a comment. I always love hearing your thoughts. Thank you so much for listening. This is Melodic Vengeance. See you next time. You take care, okay?
If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Don't forget to follow for more content just like this. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.